Hello and good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Grow with Google Ads workshop presented by Matt Weber, President of Roar Internet Marketing. We're excited to have you here this morning with us. I'd like to share with you a little bit about the SBDC and also note the fact that this webinar is proudly sponsored by Orange County government. So the Florida SBDC Network was established in 1976 by the U.S. Small Business Administration to provide technical assistance to small businesses, and the SBDC network is part of a nationwide network of small business development centers with nearly 1,000 local centers across 50 states and U.S. territories. We are funded in part by the U.S. SBA and the state of Florida, and are state designated as Florida's principal provider of business assistance and nationally accredited. So we have 9 regions throughout the state of Florida and offices all throughout the state, ranging from our headquarters in Pensacola all the way to the Keys, each region being hosted by a university or state college. And in Central Florida, we are hosted by UCF. Within Florida, our region is supported by local states and colleges, and our lead office is supported by UCF. We cover an 8-county region here, which includes Orange, Seminole, Osceola, Lake, Sumter, Volusia, Brevard, and Flagler counties. Our primary service is our no-cost, expert, confidential, one-on-one consulting services. You can meet with one of our consultants as much as you would like at no cost, as often as needed. With our connections to the SBDC network and to UCF, our consultants have access to extensive market research, which is no cost to you as well through our services. We don't stop when your business starts, so if you are either in business or looking to start your own business, much like the program today, throughout that journey, we'll continue to support your small business through many stages of growth. But beyond our training, like our workshops today and our consultants, we offer special programs for second stage businesses within our region, including programs like our CEO Exchange, Advisory Board Council, and our award-winning Small Business Institute. And lastly but not least, we also offer a variety of business training, seminars, and webinars, all stages of business as well. Before I get started, I'd like to cover a few quick housekeeping rules. You'll notice we have a chat box. We cannot see or hear each other. We cannot use the raise our hand feature, so we would ask that you please send us your questions as they come up through our chat box. We'll be happy to respond to those. And actually, you'll also notice in our chat box, our speaker Matt has provided quick Google Ads survey. Please take a moment to click that link there. You'll see the link to our Google Ads survey to get a little bit more knowledge of what your current understanding of Google Ads is. So please take a moment to do that. That will be a huge help to him. I will also note that your mics are muted by default. You'll be able to find a copy of today's presentation under the Handouts tab. If you have any trouble locating that, we will be sure to make sure we get that to you, so just let us know. You can use the chat box as well if you can't find that as well. And last but not least, we will also be providing you with a brief survey at the end of this presentation, and your feedback is absolutely invaluable. We would really appreciate if you take a few moments to take that survey. They give us really helpful information on this presentation is meeting your interests, so we can continue to plan programs in the future that are beneficial to you. So without further ado, I would like to go ahead and pass it to our presenter, Matt Weber, to introduce himself a little bit further and get us started in our presentation.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's presentation. Jessica, I think you have to make me, there you go. Awesome, fantastic. Welcome, everyone. Excited to see the number of attendees growing. And I'll just take over here. And there we go. We should be off and running. Jessica, you can see my screen okay?
I can, yes, sir. Thank you.
As Jessica mentioned, I'm Matt Weber. I'm the president of Roar Internet Marketing, a digital agency located just outside of Orlando in Altamont Springs, Florida. But more importantly for you today, I have had the privilege of being employed by Google throughout the last 12 years as a trainer for Google Ads and for Google Analytics. So I've trained people on Google Ads in over 30 different states, 2 different countries, and through hundreds of different webinars. And so today I've put together kind of a concentrated version of what you need to know to be successful with Google Ads. So here's how today's going to flow. The first thing we're going to talk about is to know your search engine results page, also known as a SERP, because that's kind of like knowing your battlefield. A lot of things affect the success of your Google Ads that are outside of Google Ads. So I want you to know the terrain that you're competing on, and we'll spend just a couple seconds on that. And then we're going to talk about the two principal types of Google Ads. Of course, there's many, but what I mean by this is automated versus non-automated. Now, there are other types of Google Ads, but the biggest division that you'll face as you start is you'll be faced with the decision of running Google Ads that is fully automated or non-automated. And so we're going to review the differences of that and how do you pick which one that you should pursue. Then we'll talk about the two different types of Google Ads campaigns. Again, there's lots of different types of Google Ads campaigns, but we're going to talk about the two that you'll face most quickly. And then we'll review some common Google Ads terms. So when you go into the interface, you're going to see a lot of abbreviations, a lot of strange words. We're going to hope to familiarize you with the ones that you'll encounter the most. And then we're going to talk about what you should do before you even begin. Now, if you're on the program today and you've already got a couple campaigns running, this is still going to be a very valuable section for you, because I find that when most people do Google Ads, they skip this part. In fact, this is probably where most Google Ads accounts get off the rails, is right here. So we'll make sure you're prepared to not make that same mistake. And then we'll go back to the beginning and we'll talk about the first of those two different types of Google Ad campaigns, smart campaigns, the fully automated campaigns, and that's a shorter version of the program. And then we'll have a Q&A section, so you can be putting your questions and answers into the chat box. And then we'll take a quick 5-minute break. When we come back, then we'll dive into what Google calls the expert or manual mode, or the non-automated version of Google Ads and how to do that. And then we'll talk about what do you do after you get the campaign set up, which is the optimization cycle. Google Ads is not a set it and forget it medium. So what do you do after you got it up and running? We'll walk you through each step. And then we'll talk about writing great ads. And then finally, we'll wrap up with how to create effective landing pages. And we'll have one more Q&A section right before we close the program. So a disclaimer though, if you keep up with your Google Ads literature, yesterday, Google Ads started rolling out a brand new interface. So today's screenshots may not appear exactly the same as what you see in your Google Ads account. Now, when they roll out these updates, they're not instantaneous. As you can imagine, given the size of this program, some of you may see it tomorrow, some of you may see it today, and some of you may not see it until maybe April on that. It's not showing up in any of the accounts that we manage right now, to give you some sense of it, and we're currently managing over 25 accounts. So just be aware that you might see something in today's presentation, log into your account and go, what? It doesn't look anything like that guy said. That's why. Now, as Jessica mentioned, there is a survey in the chat box there, and it's 4 questions. If you'd look for it, take you about 1.5 minutes to do it. The reason I'm going to ask you to take that survey is because there is a lot to talk about with Google Ads. And so if we find that today's participants, which is now climbing toward 40, are more advanced than beginners, then toward the end of the program, I might shift things around. I've got a couple extra cards that I put in the deck. If we find that today's participants are mainly people who are starting for the first time, I might rearrange things a little bit after the break. So please take a few minutes and take that survey. Does that sound like a good plan? All right, well then let's get started then, and let's dive right into know your search engine results page. Now, this whole billion-dollar ecosystem, literally, that we're going to explore starts with a relatively simple act, doesn't it? It starts when someone puts a combination of words into the Google search bar, does a Google search. Now, Google has an interesting habit of calling the same thing with 2 different names. So in Google Ads, they call this a search term. If you go into Google Search Console, this very same thing is called a query. In any respect, this is what the user, the searcher, types into that bar, and this is the trigger that sets off everything we're going to talk about today. Some trends you'll notice about these search terms is that over time, they continue to get longer. About 3 years ago, the average search term was about 3 words. And today, the average search term is just about to exceed 4 words. What you can extract from that is that people continue to get more specific, right? So, back in the day, if you were looking for a used car, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, you would have searched used car, name of city. Today, people search 2018 Mazda GLC yellow 4-door with USB port. They're very, very specific. Now, if you're taking notes today, that's something worthy of jotting down, because to know that your audience, your consumers, have this expectation that they're going to find something very specific, we as marketers then need to deliver something very specific. And coming up in about an hour, that's going to drive a lot of our landing page discussions coming up toward the end of the program. Now, the very first thing that you see on the search engine results page typically are Google ads, and they've been there since the very beginning. As you know, that about, I think it was in late 2022, Google discontinued pagination and created what's called the infinite scroll on desktop, and they did that on mobile in early 2022. But now technically there is no page 1. Now, the implication of that for Google ads is that generally now you're more likely to see 3 ads at the top of the page, and very few circumstances where you see more than 3 ads. When it was pagination, you were more likely to see 4 ads at the top of the page, but now generally you'll see 3. So in most SERPs, you'll see the Google ads at the top, but there are some SERPs, and there are less today than there were a year and a half ago, that show local service ads at the top. Now, some people call these by their popular nickname. Some people call these Google guaranteed ads, and they are called Google guaranteed ads because Google guarantees the satisfaction of the customer with this vendor, these vendors, up to a certain amount. You have to apply for them. They're not available to every business in every industry. And these are paid not by the click, but are paid by the lead. So they're called local service ads. And depending on what the query is, you may see them at the top. And if local search service ads do appear, they are always above Google ads. Now, again, depending on what the query is, you may see shopping campaign ads. Today, many regular Google ads have photographs. So if we were doing this program a couple months ago, we would have made the statement that if the ad contains a photo, it's a shopping campaign ad. Today, that's not necessarily true, but what you can see in shopping campaign ads is they have the price, they have the photo, and they have the brand where it's coming from. So if you click on one of these ads, it'll take you right to that product detail page. And these shopping campaign ads are only available to advertisers who have a Google Merchant Center and a product feed on that. So typically these are associated with e-commerce stores. Now, this particular portion of the SERP has been moving around, but it definitely affects your Google ads because these are very popular with consumers, and this is called the local results. This is now called Google Business Profile. I think this is name number 7 for this particular product since I've been working with Google. And these are not paid. However, if you look very closely at your screen right now toward the top of the orange box, you'll see that there is an ad there, and that is called a local search ad, not to be confused with a local service ad. But what's interesting about that ad is we don't control it. We can't designate it, we can't pick it, we can't even analyze the success of it. It happens if you've connected your Google Business Profile with your Google Ads account, and depending on the keywords and the query, it may show up in there, but you can't specifically request it, choose it, or analyze it. And what has been increasingly showing up on search engine results page is what's called a knowledge graph, or now people have been just calling them questions or FAQs because they've now morphed into mostly being questions. And, you know, back in the day, you would generally see 3 or 4, but once they've gotten rid of the pagination, it's not uncommon to see 8, 9, 10 questions. And on a typical SERP, when you expand one question, 4 or 5 more sometimes will get added. Now, here's the implication of these questions, or with this knowledge graph, is that it really pushes the organic results way down to the very, very bottom. And now these organic results, of course, are called organic. Some people call them the natural results, and they're called organic in theory because in general, remember those 2 words, in general, we don't manipulate or control the placement of them on the search engine results page. And you can contrast that with Google Ads, where we have a pretty reasonable amount of control over where those ads run and on what situations they run. Less true with organic. Now, when you look at everything we've just shared, there's a couple takeaways here. You know, knowing that there's no pagination anymore. You know, what is page 1 on Google anymore? You know, in theory, that doesn't exist. You should also know that these SERPs are always in flux. Whenever you do a Google search, you're really participating in a very large experiment, a UI experience on behalf of Google, because everything is tracked. Google tracks what was displayed, who clicked on what was the environment which they clicked on. Was it a mobile device? Was it a desktop computer? Were they on Wi-Fi? Were they not? And all of that is continually going into improving the SERP experience. So we look at SERPs as a thing, but in truth, it's a dynamic kind of living creature that will be probably radically different if we were to get together in 6 months. But the takeaway that I think is most important, and why I'm glad you're here today, is that the highest organic listing now could be the 20th, the 21st, the 22nd possible click on the Google search engine results page. Now remember, we used to think that being number 1 on Google was the holy grail, right? And to some degree that's true, certainly way less true. But even if you're number 1 on Google, that vaulted position, you could be the 20th, 21st possible choice, given everything we just looked at. So now your Google Ads program, with these changes in the search engine results page, is taking on more importance than it potentially was 2 years ago or 3 years ago. Because fundamentally, the higher you are on the page, the more clicks you get. Regardless of which platform that was, whether that was local search or Google Ads or one of those questions, generally there's a linear relationship between the higher you are on the page and the more likely you are to get the click. So if we're pursuing an organic strategy, we keep getting pushed further and further down on that search engine results page, and Google Ads is the way to kind of solve that. So that's the lay of the land and what a search engine results page is. And let's go up to 30,000 feet. And by the way, taking a look at some of the responses coming in on our survey, I can see that we've got people who are just starting out. I can see people we've got that are fairly deeply involved in Google Ads already. And if you haven't taken the survey, please do. So I'm going to try to get everybody to the same starting line. So if you're an experienced Google Ads practitioner, stick with me for about 15, 20 minutes. My goal in the next 15, 20 minutes is to kind of get everybody to the same starting point, and then we'll move just a little bit faster. But when I talk about the 2 types of Google Ads campaigns, I'll take a clip here from one of my favorite movies, is we're talking about the ability to put your Google Ads campaign fully on autopilot and putting it on what Google now terms the manual mode or the expert mode of that. So by looking at this chart, it's important to note that smart campaigns, as of about a year ago, year and a half ago, are now the default. Now that's key, right? Because if you're not really paying attention and you start a Google Ads account, and I'll show you what it looks like in just a second, you're gonna walk into a smart campaign without knowing it. And so when I work with a lot of people who are just starting Google Ads and they say, you know, why does mine look like this and yours look like that? Because they didn't know it, but they walked into a smart campaign. Well, what's the difference between the two? If you look on the left-hand side of the column, you can see that with smart campaigns, Google algorithmically is going to make a lot of these decisions for you. It'll make the decisions regarding what are you going to bid. It'll make the decisions about what were formerly called ad extensions, now called attributes. It'll kind of help you pick the keywords. It'll do it by itself. You can kind of manage the keyword themes, but not with the level of precision you can have with the manual mode. The reporting in Smart Campaigns is super simplified, and where the ads show is automated. Google makes those decisions. But kind of the real thing to kind of put your finger on here is with Smart Campaigns, you only can get one landing page per campaign. So that's kind of like having a store, but only having one aisle that you can direct people to. Whereas on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see that if you are managing the search campaign, you control all of that. And you can have multiple landing pages, which is a key thing to consider given how we now know that consumers and searchers are really specific in what they're looking for. Now, before we talk about Smart Campaigns, there's a word I'm sure you've heard, and that's called Performance Max. And Performance Max is kind of the superhero of Smart Campaigns. Smart Campaigns generally describe campaigns where automation is making the decisions. And when applied to just search, we use the term Smart Campaign. But a Performance Max is a type of campaign that Google is pushing very heavily right now that is a smart campaign, but not only does it run search, it can also run your ads on the display network, which we'll talk about in just a second, in YouTube and in Gmail. So it's a multifaceted, multi-powerful, but it is at the end of the day still a smart campaign. So I want you to know what that is. And we're not going to focus on Performance Max in this session, but I want you to be able to classify where it fits in this taxonomy of Google campaigns. So let's talk about two different parts of Google Ads. Now that we've kind of bifurcated, there's two types of campaigns in general. Remember, there are way more than two, but so that this program doesn't take 14 hours, we'll deal with the two most prevalent, Smart Campaigns and manual mode or expert. The two different parts of Google Ads is search, which is all about the search engine results page, and the display network. Now, the display network is a connection of literally millions of websites and apps that have signed over some level of their ability to sell their ad inventory to Google. Now, these range from everything from the New York Times website to some of the most popular app games that you play, to your neighbor who might have a blog about gardening. The whole gamut is inside the display network. You see, if you own a website or an app, you can sign up for something called AdSense, which is giving Google some portion or all of your ad inventory, and then Google puts Google Ads into that ad inventory. And some very large websites carve up their ad inventory. They let Google sell a little bit, they let another third party sell a little bit, and they will then themselves, or like I said, it could be your neighbor who has a blog and 100% of the inventory is sold through Google. Now, here's the difference of the two. On the left-hand side there, you can see that in general, when we talk about search, we're talking about text ads. Now, lately, we've had the ability to add photographs to those ads, but in general, they're text ads, unless they're shopping campaign ads, which of course have the photos. And then on search, we also saw the local service ads, which again are not available to all advertisers. When you move your eyes to the right of the screen, when we talk about the display network, we're talking about text ads, banner ads, animated ads, video ads, interactive ads. So fundamentally, the type of creative that you can use on the display network is so much larger than on search. But the difference is on search, you're getting in front of people that are actively looking for what you're doing. On the display network, that's a passive medium. Search is called an active medium. Display is called a passive medium because those people are not actively looking for what you're selling. And you can see the two different icons above those columns that you'll see inside Google Ads. This indicates that it's a search campaign, and this indicates that it's a display campaign. So on the search side, we can target people most importantly by what they're searching for. right? And that's great. And that's why Google Ads should be at the top of every small business's priority list, because we want to get in front of the people who are actively looking for what you're doing. If we can't sell our product or service to the people who woke up this morning and raised their hand and said, I want that, then likely we can't sell it to people who haven't yet realized they have an interest in what you're doing. Now, with both of them, we can target people by age and by gender, by location, what device they're on, by day of the week, and by hour of the day. But on the display side, we can target them by how they interacted with you. For example, we can say if they came to our website and if they didn't take an action, we want to run ads to them when they travel elsewhere on the internet, and that's called remarketing. We can even get so specific as saying, if they came to my website and if they landed on a specific page and if they spent a certain amount of time and if they came from a specific geography, then I want to run these ads. We can target people by how they interacted with your website. We can target people by their previous search history. We can target people by their interests, right? So if I visit a bunch of Major League Baseball related website, Google quickly knows that I'm a baseball fan. That's been recorded. We leave our DNA all over the internet for Google and many other companies to figure out what we like and what we don't like. And that information is surprisingly accurate. And on the display side, we can target people with that. So here on the screen, you see it's just a blog, and this blogger wrote an article about Peloton, Disney Peloton classes. And on the right-hand side, they are a part of the AdSense network. So an ad was served because the content is relevant to either people that have an interest in running, or here you see the advertiser is Nordic Track, so they may have chosen to target people whose previous search history contains the word Peloton, which would have been a smart thing for them to do on their part, right? So just an example of one of the many blogs that has ad content, and they've decided to join AdSense, and now Google serves up that content. So just a quick reminder of what we've done so far. We've talked about the two highest level of Google Ads campaigns, smart campaigns and manual campaigns. And we've talked about the types of opportunities, the parts of Google Ads, which is search and the display network. And again, there's more to that story, but we want to keep this program under 14 hours. Here's a quick look at some Google Ads terms you should know. As we talked about, the search term, which in Google Search Console is called the query. I think we know what that is. Now, keyword is what we're going to bid on to try to match that search query. If you've ever played either the online version or, depending on how old you are, the actual physical version of the game Battleship, you kind of understand the relationship between keywords and search terms. When we, as advertisers, formulate a keyword, we are in some sense trying to match or guess what is the combination of words that our best customers use putting into Google. So the keyword is what the advertiser does to try to match in some way the search term of what the consumer does. The ad position is where the ad falls. Now, for those of you who have been around Google Ads for a while, you know that Google used to report this as you were in the first position, the second position, and the third position. Today, simply Google reports it as you were at the top of the page, which means you were in the very highest grouping of ads. And they report it as the absolute top, which means you were the single highest ads. And that's it. That's all the information you get now about your ad position. But as we'll learn in a few minutes, ad position plays a critical role in your success in Google Ads. An impression is anytime your ad gets displayed. Doesn't mean anybody clicked on it, but if somebody saw it, it was loaded, that creates an impression. If somebody clicks on it, obviously that creates a click. The landing page in some circles is also called the POE, point of entry. And the landing page is where you are going to send the person who clicks on your ad. And we're going to see coming up in just a few minutes that that too plays a critical role in whether or not your Google Ads is successful. But the landing page is where they're going to land when they click on your ad. Now, conversion is the action that you want them to take on your page. And hopefully when you think about your website right now, you can list what are the 2 or 3 conversions, actions, what's the desired outcome for your advertising program. And if you can't articulate that, or if that's not clear on your website, then your Google Ads program may struggle a little bit. But that conversion is that desired action. And in Google Analytics, they call it a goal. And in Google Ads, it's called a conversion. The click-through rate is the percentage of impressions where someone clicks. The percentage of impressions that someone clicks is the click-through rate. The cost per click, which is typically expressed as an average, is the total amount spent divided by the number of clicks, average cost per click. The conversion rate, which is the highest, most important indicator typically of the success of your Google Ads account, is the percentage of clicks that took that desired action. And your cost per conversion, which is abbreviated CPA for cost per action, is the amount of money you spent divided by the number of conversions. Ad rank, which we'll talk about, and it's a confusing concept and in some ways, is the mathematical outcome that determines where your ad shows up on that page. And coming up, we're going to show you how it's calculated and how you can influence it. And then in Google Ads, you're going to see that a driver of a lot of this is the max CPC bid, which is not what you're going to pay, but at some point you have to calculate what's the max you are willing to pay. And coming up, we're going to tell you how to safely calculate that. And finally, and I would ask you on your notes to highlight this in yellow and write this in red, is quality score. Because remember, the system is set up to suppress advertisers who are not relevant to the search term, and it's set up to elevate searchers who are relevant to the search term. You see, this is going to get a little messy and complicated in a little bit, but you just simply have to remember this. The whole system breaks down if you and I don't get what we're looking for when we type in a search term. Do you agree with that? Right? That's a pretty simple concept. So Google knows this better than anybody. They know that this entire billion-dollar ecosystem hangs on a very thin thread, that you and I, as searchers, get satisfactory results. So they can't afford to let those top ads not be relevant to what you and I are looking for. So quality score is the mathematical element around which that judgment and that system evolves. Get a low quality score, your ad's not likely to run. Get a high quality score, your ad's likely to run. And then you're rewarded for it. Get a high quality score, pay less for the click. Get a low quality score, pay more for the click. So a lot of people think the auction is very simply cash based, but it's not actually. It's much more complex. We are going to explore quality score very deeply coming up in just about 25 minutes. Now, before you start, do this. And I want to say before we start on this, don't forget to take that survey that's inside the chat. Let's take a look at how experienced the people are in the program and what type of material you might want to most get out of this program. So you do that, and then as you're doing that, we'll talk about how to start. You know, I'm a big believer in this very simple philosophy, and that is, if you don't know the target, the weapon really doesn't matter, right? Do you all agree with that? And I think where people get off track with both their organic efforts and their paid efforts is they simply can't articulate with a level of specificity what is the word that you need to rank for, or I should say phrase. What is the phrase that you need to rank for? What are you going after? You can't go after everything. On a Google Ads standpoint, you'll go broke. And a Google Organic, it's too much work to rank for everything. So you really have to narrow down what it is that you think that your company has to rank for to capture the people who are most willing to do business with you. And somewhere in your company, you or your digital agency should have that very refined list. And if you don't have that refined list, you're going to find that spending is going to potentially get out of control very quickly. Now, the dollar impact for you in terms of Google Ads is that not every potential phrase that you could compete for is going to be valuable. You know, one of my favorite rides at the Magic Kingdom, of course, is Buzz Lightyear. And of course, it's got hundreds of thousands potential targets. And if you've ridden this ride, you know that not all of those targets are equal, and there are 4 of them that are worth 100,000 points, and many of them are worth 1,000 points. Now, I can't reveal my own secret as to which ones are the 100,000 points, of course, but this is a great analogy for Google Ads, because some phrases that you're going to bid on will not make any money or will make very little money. The key to success in today's program and in your Google Ads program is to find the ones that have the highest number of points, the biggest payout, because you should not and cannot shoot at every single target in Google Ads, and you've got to resist that temptation to try to shoot at every target, or in the Google Ads terminology, bid on every possible keyword. So how can you find what those phrases are that are meaningful to your business? So let's go through a couple steps of the homework that you can do. And the easiest one is on your screen. This actually has a formal name. This is called Google Suggest, and you've used it, and you probably didn't even know that it had a formal name and that it's used as a search tool. So this is an easy thing to do, right? You can start your query and you can see what Google suggests. And if you've been observing this, you can see that over the years, this is really refined. You know, back in the day, if it didn't include the first few letters, that you would never see anything that didn't include the first few letters that you were typing in. But as you've watched this evolve, you've noticed that Google kind of is keen on what you've searched for in the past and may make a suggestion here that doesn't match the letters that you're putting in, but may match things that you've searched for in the past that are similar, right? So you're seeing the algorithm kick in here. And this also shows up at the bottom of the Google search engine results page. Oh, you can tell this screenshot's out of date. There are no more page numbers. But now notice here, this is also a version of Google Suggest. And you can see here that these phrases, again, don't always start with the exact combination of words that you typed into. So this is a really good first step to take. And as you're kind of doing this, you're kind of making your own list of what to potentially bid for. And the key here is to narrow down that list. So we're starting with a big list, and now let's talk about how to narrow that down just a little bit. And one of the tools to use to narrow that down is called Google Trends, and you can find it at googletrends.com. That's it's google.com/trends, google.com/trends. Now, at Google Trends, you can put in any of those phrases that you just talked about. So you can put in, so if I'm a plumber, for example, plumbers have to compete for a lot of different things. So we're going to put in water heater repair. We're going to put in leaky sink. We're going to put in toilet installation. And let's take a look at the relative search volume for each of those phrases. Now I want to maybe change this from United States, because maybe there might be enough volume in Orlando to judge that, and there is. So I'm looking at the past 12 months. And as you can see, if I was just starting a Google Ads campaign for a plumber, one of the things I would focus on right out of the box is water heater repair. Now let's just do plumber near me, and that's even a clearer winner, right? Again, all things not equal. How do we figure out what are we going to focus on first? We're going to choose plumbers near me based on this because it has the highest volume, and it'll actually, depending on the search, show you which cities within this area have the highest concentration. And this is index data, by the way. This is not absolute volume, meaning it's comparing these 4 phrases to each other. It's not showing you the absolute volume. Another great tool for looking for what people search for is called answerthepublic.com. So remember we talked about that people are very specific in how they search. So I'm at answerthepublic.com. I'm putting in the word plumber, and this is going to give us more an indication of the vernacular. Now, with the advent of mobile search and voice search, we see that search terms are more likely to parallel real world language, like people talk, whereas before it was kind of artificial. People were kind of typing in a prompt almost into Google. Now what you see are more kind of real world phrases, and this gives us them grouped by some common denominators. All right, so you can see plumber to fix gas leak, plumber to install gas line. And if you go through this, and if you look for these simple color codes, it will give you an indication of volume. So sometimes there is what's called a long tail opportunity that is cheaper than just ever bidding on the term plumber. Because I would say that if we look for plumber for gas line or plumber for hot water heater, and notice the fact that they use the word hot, even though it's technically not a hot water heater, but that's a great consumer insight there, because a plumber would tell you don't use the word hot. It's a water heater, not a hot water heater. But we could go back to our client and say, well, you and I know that, but people actually use the word hot, so I'm going to bid on the phrase hot rather than just bidding on the phrase plumber for water heater. So these are all different groupings that contain the word plumber in some combination or another. And here you can see that people will search plumber versus HVAC because they're trying to figure out which one do they need to call. That could be a very interesting Google Ads opportunity, because sometimes we have to get out of the forest a little bit because everybody is in the forest, and we got to look for more singular, more unique opportunities. All right, so we're generating this list of keywords, and let's look at one final place that we can get even more precise data, and that's in our Google Ads account itself. So now you're looking at what your Google Ads account will probably look like if you're in expert mode, manual mode, and you're in what's called the all campaign view. And you can see that you're in the all campaign view up here on the left-hand side because it says all campaigns. So now I'm going to go to tools and settings, and under tools and settings, I'm going to go to keyword planner here on the far left-hand side. When I go to the keyword planner, I have two options. One is going to help me explore new keywords, and the other is going to help me get volume and forecast for keywords I already know. So let's start here with discovering new keywords, and I have a couple different ways to pursue this. One way is I could type in a website right here, and then Google will scan the website, and it will say, oh, okay, well, based on that website, here are some keywords that you could potentially bid on. The disadvantage of using that is that maybe your website isn't the product of the type of initial research that should have been done when building a website. So maybe your website is not optimized around the right phrases. So we're giving the bot a false signal. So I'll give you a secret here. And this is the first secret that you can write down. Take one of the phrases that you're thinking about, do a Google search, and find out who consistently ranks #1. Because that competitor possibly has had the benefit of SEO optimization, maybe working with a digital marketing agency, and maybe that website is grounded in the type of research that you're trying to do right now. So you can put that website in there. You don't have to put your own website in there. You can put somebody else's website in there. And because that may be better, have a better foundational element to it, you might get better answers. But if not, if you don't want to do that, you can still do plumber near me, hot water heater repair, toilet installation. We'll get our results. And again, up here, I can change this to a smaller geography. Now note when you add the Orlando DMA here to target it, you have to turn off United States. And people generally skip that step. And then the data is kind of diluted. So then I click and I get my results. Now in this, we're finally getting pretty granular here because we're not only seeing the average monthly searches here, but we're seeing whether or not it's grown, whether or not it's gone down. And this competition, take it with a grain of salt. If I have to make a lot of choices, I'll use it, but generally I might not ignore it. And then what is the bid from the low range to the high? Now really focus in here on your screen. Look at the variance in these two numbers. And here is the best example you can see of that quality score that we talked about in the beginning of the program in play. Remember this, the system is set up to reward advertisers who are relevant to the search term and set up to suppress advertisers who are not relevant to the search term. And right here, you see the boldest evidence of that. Now, this makes it a little bit harder to do models, right? We're going to talk about doing models in just a second, but if you're doing models, maybe you want to take the worst case scenario. And what I mean by that is if I do have to bid $39.95 and I buy 100 clicks and I only get 6 conversions out of that, what does that mean for me from a revenue standpoint? And we'll talk more about that in just a second. But so now for the first time, we're getting volume information, we're getting whether or not this is trending up or down, and we're getting cost per click information. So we've taken this giant list that we started off with, right? Because I'm sure there's some phrases that you're thinking about right now that you've either already used in Google Ads or that you're writing down to start your list. And we're going to start refining that list. And this is a great way because you simply cannot shoot at everyone. So go back to Buzz Lightyear and think about all these things that you could potentially shoot at. And they're not all going to make you money. So you've got to figure out which one is going to make you money and which one is always better to start small and expand. All right. So we've talked about Google Trends. You can find that at googletrends.com. We've talked about Google. We've answered the public, which is at answerthepublic.com right there. And we've talked about the keyword planner, which you find in your Google Ads account under tools and setting under the column on the left-hand side called planning. And remember, if the new version of Google Ads hits your account, none of those descriptions are going to apply. So being able to forecast, and this is the part, and this is why we're calling this do this before you start. This is why most people don't get the success they're looking for in Google Ads, is because they don't do the math. And at the end of the day, it is just math. So there's many tools out there, but you can find one tool at ppcprojector.com, and you can put in, hey, I'm going to buy 125 clicks, and from your Google Keyword Planner, you now know what the average cost per click is, and you can put in your website conversion rate, which is a number that hopefully you know, but if you don't, it's available in your Google Analytics. It is a fulcrum, a key point of being successful in Google Ads. That's what keeps you from wasting money, your website conversion rate. And then if you do know what is your lead to sale conversion rate, then you can add that in, and this will start showing you whether or not this has the potential to make money. So now you can take that long list of keywords and say, that's a lovely thought, but we simply cannot make money when the keyword is $38 based on our website conversion rate. Can't do it. Math never works. If we bought 100 or if we bought 1,000, we're never going to make money. So now we got to focus on keywords that cost less than $20, or we have to significantly improve our conversion rate. But if you do this beforehand, you'll guarantee that your account never gets off the rails. You'll never have a situation like, oh man, I spent $800 and I didn't get anything for it. And when I hear that from people, it's generally because they didn't do this level of math. All right, I think we're generally on pace so far. So let's go to the final part of this first section, just a reminder to do the survey, because it looks like today we have mainly people who are just starting out in Google Ads, and we've got a lot of business owners on the call today. So remember, we talked about in the beginning, if you're not paying attention, you're going to walk right into a smart campaign. And we have the choice. We can either run a smart campaign, which is Google algorithmic autopilot, or we can run an expert mode. But look how hard it is now to run an expert campaign. See that in the red box there? Yeah, no, your eyes aren't bad. That's how big it is right now for you to choose expert mode, right? So now you see why so many people, without even knowing it, started along the path of a smart campaign. And it takes some backtracking to get out of this mode. And once you start your first campaign in smart campaign mode, it stays in smart campaign mode until you have to take an overt action to get out and be in expert mode. But when you look at your screen, you can see the tide is definitely pushing you toward smart campaign. So how long does it take to set up a smart campaign? Generally, and it will happen on this call, by the way, I generally have people who will tell me after the program they did it while the program was on. It's that easy. Now I'm going to show you in just a minute before you begin how you should determine whether or not you are a better candidate for smart campaigns than an expert mode. I'm going to show you that in just a second, so you might want to hold off, but here's how easy it is. You'll put in your business name, you'll put in your website. Those are all things that I'm sure are not going to challenge you. You're going to pick a radius, or you can put in a city name. They just upgraded it where you can put in zip codes, and you can even put in DMAs like you saw in the example. So you've got a couple greater options than you did before with smart campaigns, and you'll make that choice. So you can get all the way down to the zip code level here by typing in either specific city names or zip codes. You can put that right in that box. Now this is where smart campaigns vary from manual mode many ways, but here you just choose a category. So some of you are probably thinking by now, man, this kind of feels a lot like setting up my Google business profile. Yes, it does in many ways. So you pick a category, and then once you pick that category, Google algorithmically says, oh, well, people who typically choose that category typically use these keywords or offer these products. And so you can see here on the screen, just by choosing yoga studio, there are a lot of different types of yoga. And so if you don't offer these, then you simply would not add them. But you can see you don't get into that level of refinement that you saw on answerthepublic.com or that you saw on the Google Ads keyword planner. Very large, high level groupings, and you say yay or nay. And then the next thing that you have to do in a smart campaign, and I think this is the hardest part for everybody, and we're going to battle this coming up in just a few minutes with expert mode campaigns, is to write an ad. Now, for those of you either coming back to Google Ads, something called expanded text ads are gone. Expanded text ads were ads all of a consistent format. Now, what Google Ad wants you to do is type in 6 headlines, if you have maximum of 30 characters, and 3 description lines, and they are 90 characters. And you put them in there, and there'll be a little graph up here that says, you know, this is strong, this is weak, etc. And then what Google is going to do is, based on what you've input, you're basically giving them the cards, and they are going to determine in which combination that they're going to display the ad, right? So you don't write the ad like you did in the old days a year ago, where you say, this is my headline and this is my description. Now you say, hey, Google, here's a bunch of elements that I think you're smart enough to play with, and arrange them as you see fit. You do have a limited ability to add images, and you can add a display URL and a final URL. So a display URL is, you know, sometimes the URL of your website is not pretty. Maybe you have a page that is yourwebsite.com/aspx.id equals 5003. Well, that's not very pretty. So you don't want to put that in as the link in the ad. So you have the ability to say website.com and make up a name at the end, like a vanity plate on a car. You do ultimately have to put in the final URL, which is going to be the landing page for this campaign in there. So you'll populate that in there. And I want to draw your attention to this warning that some of you may see a feature. It is in beta, so it's not going to be in all of your accounts, that you can check a box and you could say, oh, Google, why don't you just go create the ads using what you see on the website? And I would strongly encourage you never to turn that button on. And if you're paying particular attention right now, note that right now, it's not the default. We come back in 45 days, I'm willing to wager money that it's going to be the default and that you have to uncheck it, whereas right now you have to check it. Now, the reason I say don't do that, hey, Google's good at a lot of things. I'm going to tell you they're not really great copywriters. And if you're not really confident in the copy of your website, guess where they're going to get these phrases from? Your website. And so if you're not extraordinarily confident that your website's got fantastic copy, this becomes a very reckless technique to use. It is in beta. Some of you will see it, some of you won't see it. And then you get to pick a budget, and Google will give a recommended budget because now they know those categories, they know the geography that you've picked, so they're going to recommend a budget. You don't have to take their recommendation. You can choose your own, and then if you choose your own, there'll be a little graph that shows up here, and we'll show you how many clicks you should be able to expect for that amount of money. And that's it, right? So now you can see why people can set up a smart campaign before this presentation is over. Now, I'm not saying you should. So let's take a look at, should you choose smart campaigns or should you choose expert mode? I think smart campaigns can be a good idea. And here's my criteria. If you have less than 8 hours a month to commit to managing your account, then they definitely become an option. If your business is reasonably conventional, it's easily understood, you're a plumber. So for example, I see someone on the program today that offers security systems, that sells clothing, definitely would not do that. Or as a general contractor, I definitely would not do that because general contractors generally offer a variety of services. So not a good idea if you're a general contractor. But if you're a plumber, you're an electrician, you're an accountant, you're a locksmith, those all make sense. And only use smart campaigns if you have tremendous statistical confidence in the effectiveness of your website. And I say that because you don't get a lot of data back. And so your opportunities to refine things and make them better, which is the beauty of digital marketing, right? The beauty of digital marketing is that you can react in real time and see the data. Then, then if you're off track or if it's not effective, you just don't know it right away. It's not as visible. So don't do a smart campaign unless you're rock solid confident in the effectiveness of your website. If you only want to drive phone calls, form submissions, or physical visits, smart campaign's an option. If you want people to download a brochure, if you want people to watch a particular video, smart campaigns are not as particularly as effective. And I think the only amount of money that I would risk in a smart campaign would be $800 a month. If I'm going to spend anything more than that, then I want more control over that. So of course, then pilot Google Ads yourself using expert mode or manual. If you're committed to learning the ever-evolving Google Ads management tool, right? It's always changing. That's a key criteria. Of course, you can always hire somebody to do it too. That's an option. And if you don't hire somebody, then in most cases you want to count on having at least 8 hours a month to manage your Google Ads account. And maybe you want to do an expert mode just because you want to learn the basics before you hire an agency, so you can understand the vocabulary and you can understand better what they're doing. Anytime you start Google Ads, you really should have the patience to wait 30 to 60 days for results. And if you're putting more money at risk than $800 a month, then I would definitely lean toward these manual or expert modes. So that puts us right on pace. And so Jessica, if you're there and if we do have any questions, this would be a good time for us to take any Q&A that's appearing in the chat.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. This has been fabulous and so helpful so far. It's been great. So I actually do have a couple of questions, and as I'm reading these and as Matt's answering them, folks, please still feel free to, of course, take advantage of that chat box to ask your questions. But my first question for you, Matt, is, so have you or your colleagues, in just your general research and experience, found that the links on Google search results at the top, those sponsored ads at the top, do they get ignored or less clicks than the search results that appear as a result of the search?
So there's two answers to that question. Most research suggests that the ads get anywhere from 20 to 30% of the clicks on a typical Google search engine results page. Answer number one. Answer number two is that when you talk about conversions, people taking an action, a Google ad for most advertisers is more likely to generate a conversion because those people know that they're clicking on an ad and they're in direct pursuit of something. Whereas while organic clicks are extremely valued, they tend to be more associated with higher funnel, top of the funnel, people that are researching, figuring things out, where Google ads are generally linked to people that are more directionally oriented toward purchasing, taking an action.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I actually, and that person asked that question said great answer, helpful answer. Thank you. And then my last question that I currently have for the moment, and I'm assuming this is probably referred to the smart campaigns, or we were just talking about, like, it says, can we turn it off so we can arrange the way we want? So I know you mentioned there was a setting that currently it's defaulted to be turned off. But eventually you said maybe there'd be a chance that it would automatically be a setting that you would need to uncheck. Would you mind talking a little bit more about that?
Yeah, the question is, can we avoid smart campaigns? Yes, at that tiny, almost imperceptible link at the bottom, you can click on expert mode. And once you move toward expert mode, it doesn't offer you the chance to go to smart campaigns again, unless you actively seek it, in the same way that if you in smart campaign mode, it doesn't offer you the chance to go to expert unless you take some really hidden steps to go that way. If I'm misinterpreting the question, I do want to say too that with both Google Ads, smart campaigns, and expert campaigns, you can pause them and stop them with no detrimental outcome to either one of them. So you're not making any long-term commitment at all. You could start a smart campaign and pause it 24 hours later. Well, I wouldn't recommend that. You could do that. So you have complete control of turning any one of those two options on and off.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And another question I have here is, we have someone who is just starting their website. It's not quite finished yet. So they're wondering, should they wait to start Google Ads until their website is done? They're starting to think about that now, and they're just wondering, well, if I did start it now, would I be able to make changes later once my website actually is done, or should I just hold off altogether?
You definitely have to wait because both forms of Google Ads need a place to go. You have to give it a landing page. So unless you have an old website that you want to direct them to, my counsel would be, it sounds like you're in an optimization and refinement and improvement stage. I would wait until your website is polished. And the person who asked that question, I'm really going to encourage you to stick with us. And at about 15 minutes before the end, we're going to talk about why that is so important, that answer that I just gave.
Brilliant. Excellent. And then I have another question here that is, question if there's still time, what kind of working relationship should a new business expect if an agency like yours is contracted? So what is it like to work with an agency such as yours?
Generally, agencies will offer an amount of time, which is based on the services that are required. So one service is managing Google Ads, another service would be trying to rank through search engine optimization, and another service might be trying to rank in that local search pack. So the agency should assess your situation. How far are you from the starting line on each one of those? How much distance do we have to travel together? And if you're very close and already appearing in all the places that you should be, then the agency should be transparent and say, hey, we need a minimal amount of time because we're just really in maintenance mode, frankly. Or the agency should be transparent and say, unfortunately, we're not in any of the races that we need to win, so we got to get you to the starting line. And then once we get you to the starting line, we got to get you competitive. So that's going to require more amount of time per month. And so have that open discussion about how much time does it take to achieve your goals, and be really clear about what your goals are. That maybe you want to increase the number of people that fill out a particular form. Maybe you want to increase, if you're an e-commerce site, how many people sell, but really go into any meeting with a digital agency knowing what you want to accomplish. And that's the starting point for those conversations.
Great, thank you very much, Matt. That is all of the questions I'm seeing for the moment. So I'll just remind folks that we'll have some more Q&A a bit later. So feel free to continue to dig into this chat box. And thank you so much for the great information so far, Matt. And I think that wraps us up.
All right, so that allows us to take a 5-minute stretch your leg break. So take a look at your watches, your computer screen. We're gonna come back at 10 minutes after 11 and pick up with expert mode. And don't forget to fill out that survey in the chat box. We'll see you at 10 minutes after 11. Welcome back, everybody. Hope you had a chance to stretch your legs, get something to drink, maybe sneak in a snack or so. We are on a pace to end right at noon. And we'll make sure that there's a Q&A section at the end of that too. But we're doing really well, and I'm looking at the responses to the survey and seeing we've got quite a few people who own their own company on the call today. So just a shout out to all of you that have own your own company. Good to have you here today. Wonderful that you're trying to learn this. Fantastic. Welcome. So let's talk about expert or manual mode. Remember, this is where we're going to take responsibility for all of the decisions. And here's how Google Ads should be structured. Now remember, behind the scenes, Smart Campaigns are doing a lot of this, but you have one Google Ads account, and a Google Ads account has to be owned by a single email address. A change of about a year ago is that your single Google account can own more than one Google Ads account, but a Google Ads account can only be owned by one email address. Now, I'll share with you a situation that we're in the midst of right now, because it's based on this. You should have a business-centric Google account that you use for your Google Analytics account, your Google Ads account, etc. Because right now I'm helping out a company that an employee set up the Google Ads account, and the employee used their own Gmail account. And so now the business's Gmail, the business Google Ads account is owned by the employee's Gmail account, and the employee left the organization. So by having a business Google account, whether that is your business name, marketing at gmail.com or whatever you choose, that way it's not tied into any one individual. And when you use a single Google account to connect your Google Ads, your Google Analytics, your Google Search Console, your Google Business Profile, your Looker account, when you have that all centrally connected with your company, things happen so much easier. And you're going to save so much frustration. And that's the only password that you would need to remember, is just that one. So if that's not the case now, there are some ways that you can change who the owner is, and you can find some help for that online. But I would suggest you get to that point to make sure that no single individual that you are not in control of owns your Google Ads account. Now, your Google Ads account also has all of your billing information. So one credit card, you can put more than one credit card on file, and you're going to make some decisions at the account level. And the decisions you're going to make at the account level are the currency, which I don't think is an issue for anybody in the room. You want to deal in dollars, and that'll be presumed if the computer that you set it up with is from the United States. And it will also presume that the time zone that you want to see data in is the time zone that the computer that set up the Google Ads account is in. Now that's a change, because they used to actually all default to Pacific time zone where Google is, but now they default to the time zone where the computer is that's set up. So once you set those decisions for the account, they can never be changed. There is a slight exception to that when it comes to time zone, but we won't get into those details. Now, once you have an account is divided up into something called a campaign. Now notice in this account, I can have multiple campaigns, whereas before we were setting up a single Smart campaign. And at the campaign level, we make these decisions: money, language, location, where the ads are going to be seen, and whether or not it has an end date. So when you think about the different services that you offer, you may say to yourself, you know what? I want to independently control the money that flows to one. So let's go back to our general contractor in the group for just a second, and maybe that general contractor offers roofing, and maybe they offer windows, but they don't want the windows to run 365 days a year, and they don't want the roofing to run 365 days a year, and maybe they want to have different budgets, which means then, based on the slide that's in front of you, they have to be in their own campaigns. Everybody follow that? Whereas in the SMART campaign, if we just checked roofer and window installation, in that it's all coming out of the same bucket of money. Here, we can control the bucket of money. So we can also say for one campaign, maybe we're going to run a special St. Patrick's Day campaign, and we want that to end on March 17th. So that's a different campaign than the one that we want to keep running beyond St. Patrick's Day. So on the campaign level, we make decisions about what's the bucket of money, what language, what's the location we're targeting, and where the ads are going to be seen, to whom are they going to be seen, and what's the end date. And then the campaigns are divided into things called ad groups. And ad groups, think of ad groups as a Tupperware container that contains both keywords. Remember, the keywords are the things that we're bidding on to match the search queries, and ads. They have to be in the same Tupperware container, which means they have to be kind of related. So one Google Ads account subdivided into multiple campaigns, and campaigns are subdivided into ad groups. It might be easiest to see how this works if I show you how it's done wrong, which is how it's done commonly. So let's say, for example, there's a furniture store and they have one campaign and they've called it the furniture campaign, right? Which means the campaign is going to have the same end date. Everything that you see on the screen is going to go to the same people. It's coming out of the same bucket of money. It's using the same language, etc. And because they only have one ad group, remember, Tupperware container that contains keywords and ads. In this case, the ad is the best furniture, great selection, made in the USA, free shipping, 5-year warranty, website address. And then on the bottom there, you can see all the keywords they're bidding on, because they've said these are all the things that we offer. And you might on some level say, well, that makes sense, right? And so the ad that you see on the screen is generic because it has to apply to someone who searched for lamp, to someone who searched for leather chair, leather sofa, leather love seat. It's got to apply to all those. So if you search patio furniture, does that ad make sense? Arguably, yes. If you search kitchen table, does that ad make sense? Arguably, yes. But now let's talk real world this for just a second. If you went to Google and you searched the phrase leather love seat and you saw that ad on the screen, are you going to click on it? No, because it's not relevant to what you're looking for. Remember, people are very specific in how they search. So let's redo this. Let's remake this. And we'll still have that one furniture campaign, but let's divide this up into specific ad groups for leather sectionals, leather love seats, leather chairs. Now, when you go to Google, just because we rearranged it and you search leather love seats, look at the ad that you get. You get an ad that is about leather love seats. So the structure of the account, the way that the account is built, it's organized, is a huge factor in whether or not it's going to be successful at all, and more importantly, whether or not it's going to be cost effective. So remember this taxonomy, this structure: one account, divided into campaigns, divided into ad groups. Ad groups are made up of ads and keywords. Now we can get a level of control here over when Google displays our ad by using matched types. And these have changed a lot in the past year and a half so. But when you bid on that keyword and you put brackets around it as indicated on your screen, in the old days, a year and a half ago, that would have meant to Google only display my ad when the search term is those two words. That's it. Anything other than that, don't display my ad. Well, Google's being a little bit more liberal now in how they interpret the word exact match. So we're going to talk about that in just a second. And when you do it as a phrase match, which is quotations about it, the old definition of that was show my ad when the search term contained those two words. They don't necessarily have to be in that order, and they can be surrounded by other words and they can be separated by other words, but it has to contain those two words or close semantic derivatives of those two words. And then finally, the third term you should know is broad match, which is saying to Google, hey, show my ad when anything even remotely semantically similar to these words is in the search term, then go ahead and show my ads, right? Now you're probably thinking to yourself, okay, this doesn't make a lot of sense. What does this really mean to you running Google Ads? So let's just say hypothetically here for just a second that you sold Granny Smith apples, but there are a whole bunch of apples, right? Do you agree? Right? I mean, even though Granny Smith is my favorite, you've got Golden Delicious apples, you've got red apples, you've got California apples, and a whole host of other types of apples. So if you were to just bid on the term apples, right, that's going to waste a lot of money. But even in today's world, if we put, hey, I want to bid on the word Granny Smith apple because they're the best, as an exact match, Google is still going to display your ad for Granny Smith apple, plural, green apples, because to Google, green apples are equal to Granny Smith apples, even though you and I know they're not, Macintosh apples, and Golden Delicious apples. You see what's happening now, right? Google is becoming much more liberal with how they define this thing that we call an exact match. And if you put it in as a phrase match, Granny Smith apple, look, it even expands even more. Now Google's going to show your ad for how to grow Granny Smith apples, are Granny Smith apples in season, Granny Smith apple seeds, are green apples good for you, and all of those queries. And if you just put in Granny Smith apple as a broad match, well, now you're just giving Google a license to show your ad nearly any time, because now it's going to show for how do you make apple pie recipes, what's the best type of green apple, Granny Smith's restaurant, decor with apples, right? Look at all that, right? And how much of that do you really want if you are selling just Granny Smith apples? Now, here's a real world story. This happened just a couple months ago. I was helping a gentleman with an account, and he runs a PEO. PEO is a professional employment organization, and so some companies may subcontract their employees, if you will, to a PEO, and then the PEO takes care of all the benefits and the payroll and et cetera. They're very popular. And he was running Google Ads, and he came to me and he said, you know, it's Google Ads, it's a waste of money, it's a crock of crap, I'm not getting anything out of it. And when I looked into his account, he was bidding on the word PEO as a broad match. And so I went into his search term report, and in a minute I'm going to show you how to do this. And I said, well, here's the phrases, the search terms that your ads have displayed for. By you bidding on the term PEO, this is an exact, I downloaded it, I put it on this slide, this is what your ads displayed for. Now look at that list, right? Remember, he's a PEO, he's here in Central Florida. Among these, which ones are really going to bring him value, right? Just 3. That's it. The rest of it was all waste. So he paid for this, 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 right? You get the point here. He paid for this, he paid for this, he paid for this. Shouldn't have paid for that. That's all wasted money, just flushed away. So the more general you make your keywords, the more money you waste, the lower click-through rate you get. And as you're going to find out in just a second, a low click-through rate is going to translate into a low quality score, which creates this vicious circle, because then if you have a low quality score, then you end up paying more for the clicks. So another point here to take some notes, if you're taking them, negative keywords now in the management of Google Ads are far more important than they ever were. So with negative keywords, we have to tell Google what we're not, as well as telling Google what we are. And this is another advantage over expert mode versus smart campaigns. You see, when I start a campaign in expert mode, I have a list, and it's a long list. And this is just some short sample of it, of things that I'm going to automatically populate from day one as negative keywords. Free, jobs, employment, photo, image, how to, DIY, author, book, competitor names, names of cities you don't serve, laws about, these are all things that I know are going to show up attached to almost anything you tell me you want to bid on in Google Ads. So if I know that that's going to happen, and I know that that's not going to bring any value, why do I want to start with those? So I'm going to put them in as negative keywords right from the beginning. An option I do not have in smart campaigns as easily. So negative keywords, just as important to tell Google what you aren't as what you are. So let's take a look at where that search term report is in your Google Ads account. And for those of you that have a Google account now, then I would say to you, you could follow along here and you can see what you've been paying for. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to back out of the keyword plan and I'm going to back out here. Now I'm back in that all campaign view indicated here by all campaigns. And this time I'm going to choose a campaign. And once I'm in that campaign over here on the left-hand side, I'm going to break down the main category of keywords. And then I'm going to go into search terms. Now, depending on the volume here, it may or may not show, but these are the exact phrases that someone typed into Google Ads that triggered that ad. Now, for those who've been around Google Ads for a long time, you notice there's a big change here, and that is back in the day, again, 2 years ago, Google showed you every single one. But if we look at the bottom here, we'd say, hey, the campaign had 251 impressions and 14 clicks, but they're only showing me 2, 3, 4 of those 14 clicks, right? So Google's only showing me a small percentage of the actual queries. At one time, they showed you 100% of the queries. But even still, this is pretty valuable because in Google's words, these are the most influential, I'm not sure what they mean by influential, phrases, the most impactful and influential there, and they still help us guide. So I look at all this and I say, okay, do I want to compete? Do these all represent people that I can service? Yes, they can. Yes, I can. So these are all yes. So I have no opportunity right now to put in negative keywords. But this is called your search term report. And remember, to get to it, you choose a campaign, you choose the large category of keywords, and then you choose search terms. And these are the actual words in all their glory. You're going to see all the misspellings. You're going to see all the confused terms in there that people will type into Google that caused your ad to trigger. And I think for those of you that have a campaign running and you do that exercise, I think some of you might be a little horrified, frankly, at what you're going to see in that list. Now, the thing about Google Ads is that I always describe it as a brain versus brawn medium. And when I take over other people's accounts, one of the things I see is they try to outspend and they try to win by spending more, spending more, spending more. But if you use Google Ads the right way, it's really about outthinking. It's not about outspending. It's about outthinking. It's not about who has the most money. It's about who caters to the searcher more than anybody else. Now, this gets back to this very fundamental core that I want you to leave this program with, and that is this idea of quality score, and that the system suppresses ads that are not relevant to the query or the search term and elevates it that are. And I remember many years ago, I had a client and they ran a landscaping company, right? The lawn maintenance company. They came to your house and they cut your grass, and very successful company. And they wanted to run a Google Ads campaign, and the owner had a great idea. He said, I want to bid on the term lawnmower, and I want to run an ad that says, hey, don't buy a lawnmower, hire me instead, and you have your weekends free, et cetera, et cetera. Now, in conventional marketing, that's a great idea because consumer has a problem, needs a lawnmower, and you're offering an alternative solution. In conventional marketing, that's a great idea. In Google Ads, that's going to fail because we can't bid on the word lawnmower and not be relevant with our content to lawnmower, right? So we're never going to get a quality score high enough to compete because Google knows that if you were to search for a lawnmower on Google, you're not looking for a lawn maintenance company. So even though he had the desire, he had the money, it's not going to work because of this system. So whenever you think about Google Ads, you've got to think about this system called quality score and how this comes in play. Now, this is how Google score, the quality score, affects what shows up on a Google search engine results page because it's part of, and I think if you really dive into the literature, you'll see that ultimately this comes from Google, but Google will even say this is a bit of an oversimplification. However, it expresses the basic concept. So let's take our three judges on The Voice right now, Blake, Shelton, and let's say that Blake wants to bid $1 and he's got a quality score of 8, but Kelly wants to bid $1 also, and she's got a quality score of 10, and new guy here, Chance the rapper, he's big money, he's making a lot of money, so he's willing to bid $2.35, but he's not really paying attention, he didn't attend my program, so he has a quality score of 3. So these are all very real world scenarios. Kelly obviously took the time, manages her landing page, follows everything we talked about in the program today, she gets a higher quality score. Well, what's the outcome of that? If the formula for ad rank is the maximum you're willing to bid, not what you are going to pay, but what you're willing to bid, and you multiply that out, well, then you can see that Kelly is going to have a higher ad rank than Blake, and Chance, even though he was willing to spend the most, has the lowest ad rank, right? So this is pretty convoluted, right? I mean, generally people think that Google Ads is a straight auction. It's not a straight auction. This quality score is a huge part of it. And it even goes even further, and it plays a role in how much you're going to pay per click, because how much you pay per click, once Google establishes a minimum for any auction, which they will even fess up and say is based on competitive factors, then once they establish that floor, then how much you actually pay, the actual cost per click, is a product of your quality score divided by your ad rank divided by the ad rank below you. So if Kelly here is willing to pay $1 and the ad rank below her is an 8, then her 10 gets divided by an 8. So remember where the ad rank came from? It came from the quality score. So quality score is not only giving you leverage on the front side, it's giving you kind of a decrease of power, right? Decreasing the cost on the cost side. It's the ad rank divided by the ad rank that you have to beat the next competitor in the auction. So you can see it behooves you on many levels to manage the account for the highest quality score. Now, what are the factors of quality score? How do you control it? Well, Google will say there's 3, arguably there's probably more. The largest driver of quality score is click-through rate, which is kind of comforting because there's a certain democratic element to all this. If you run an ad on a particular keyword and a bunch of people click on it, then Google says, well, I guess that must be relevant because a whole bunch of people look at it and clicked on it. So, the people decide. Click-through rate's a large driver of quality score. The other factors that come into play is overall relevance, and we're going to dive into this coming up, but how relevant is your ad to the search term, and how relevant is your keyword to the actual search term? And we're going to illustrate this in just a second. And then your landing page plays a role too. Is your landing page relevant? Is it transparent? Google spends a good deal of time battling bad guys, and so bad guys are going to try to bid on things like, how do I change my account at target.com? And they're going to try to put up a fake page that looks like target.com, and they're going to hide the fact that the URL isn't really on target.com. They're going to not be transparent. So transparency is a big deal on that. And navigability, particularly on the mobile side, is Google's looking at the experience. They're looking at when someone clicks, are they going to be able to do what Google thinks they should be able to do on your website? So you can see here the landing page plays a role, but if you have to attack something first, attack click-through rate. So how do you improve your quality score? Let's go into it. There's 3 things you've got to do, and we're going to show you them all in just a second. You've got to increase what I call your line of relevance. You've got to increase your click-through rate, which is going to be related to 2 factors: where the ad appears, because remember we said in the very beginning, the higher the ad is on the search engine results page, the more likely it is to get a click, and that's true for any element, and the quality of the copy itself. So we're going to talk about how to write great ads coming up in just a second. and you've got to improve your landing page. So if you're suffering from quality score, these are the 3 ways you've got to break it down. So what do we mean by the line of relevance? I want you to pretend for just a second that you love mint chocolate chip ice cream. Oh man, you're just yearning for mint chocolate chip ice cream. And so you go to Google to find out who has mint chocolate chip ice cream. Now remember, just close your eyes for a minute and just stay focused on mint chocolate chip. You love mint chocolate chip. And I do this for my wife because she loves mint chocolate chip. So we look at that, and let's just say hypothetically that you have a website and you're an ice cream shop, and so you decided to land people on the homepage of your ice cream shop. And so on that homepage, you know, it says, hey, we're an ice cream shop, and look at us, we've got all kinds of flavors. And your ad says, hey, come to our ice cream shop. We've got all kinds of flavors, we've got 37 flavors. Here's the price per scoop. Talks about ice cream. And the keyword that you're bidding on is chocolate chip ice cream. But remember, what does the searcher want? What do you want? You want mint chocolate chip ice cream. So that setup is not going to leave the searcher satisfied. So if we look at kind of the lines that connect these things, you see where it's broken? It's not consistent. This is what the searcher wants. Your ad's not really delivering what they want. The keyword is not delivering what they want. The ad is not delivering what they want. And the landing page is not delivering what they want. Now, there are a lot of Google Ads accounts right now that function just like the way you see on the screen because it's easier. This is simpler. It takes way less effort. It's not going to produce a high quality score, and it's not going to produce results because people have an expectation that you are going to deliver exactly what they search for. So if the searcher is searching for mint chocolate chip ice cream, you should be bidding on the keyword mint chocolate chip ice cream. And what should your ad be about? Mint chocolate chip ice cream. And what page should you land them on? Not the home page about ice cream, but about the page about mint chocolate chip ice cream. So when we talk about that line of relevance, it has to be perfectly straight. The pursuit of what the searcher wants ultimately has to end in an outcome that is exactly aligned with what they want. Anything less, and you're likely not going to be successful. And that's why this takes a little bit of time and effort to do that. So once we have that up and running, we figured our kind of line of relevancy out. What do we do once we get all that up and running? And how do we get to that point where we're amazingly relevant? Well, the first thing we do, right, is we look at our search query report, and we showed you how to do that in the Google Ads tool. Remember, you could pick a campaign, and then you're going to choose keywords on the left-hand side. You drop that down. The option is search terms, and that shows you all the ones. Now you look at that list and you go, man, not all of that is relevant to what I'm selling, just like the gentleman who was offering a PEO. So then we go back to that PEO list, and you can think about all the negative keywords that he needs to add. There were names of competitors in there. There were names of cities, all kinds of things we would add with negative keywords. And then he said, you know, I'm bidding on PEO as a broad match. Maybe based on what I saw in this search query report, I want to add a match type of an exact match of PEO near me. Remember, we saw that as one of the actual search terms. So he's going to refine that match type, and maybe he says, you know what, that should be in its own ad group, because that ad can say, hey, yes, there is a PEO near you. And remember that one of the things in the search query report was PEO for restaurants. Epiphany, because then he's going to create a separate ad group about restaurants, and he's going to then bid on the term PEO for restaurants. And what's his landing page going to be? Going to be about restaurants. You know, I want to share with you a story. I was working with an architect for years, and I remember when we first got together, we said, you know, you're going to need a page about banks, and you're going to need a page about hospitals, and you're going to need a page about municipal buildings, all the things that they did and did well. And he looked at me and he said, Matt, it's the same stuff. Architecture is architecture. Whether I do it for a bank or whether I do it for a hospital, it's all the same stuff. I don't need a separate page for all that. And I said, well, to you, it's the same stuff. But you know what someone wants who's building a bank? They want an architect who's previously built banks. And somebody who's building a school building, they want an architect who's previously built school buildings. It's just the way it works. People have that expectation. So he resisted for a long time. And ultimately I said, you know, he was about to let us go. And I said, listen, give us one last shot, do it our way, follow our recommendations. And when he did, he saw the success that was out there. But you've got to continually do this cycle. You may start with one ad group and evolve into 2 and evolve into 3, but this is the ongoing management of a Google Ads campaign. And it's so important because Google wants to let everything through the fence. And it takes a lot of effort, more so almost every month goes by, to stop Google from letting everything go through the fence. Because let's get to the bottom line here. Google doesn't make money if your ad doesn't show. Do you agree? Right? So I'm not saying that there's anything nefarious going on, but there is an overarching factor that says Google's interest is benefited more from more ads showing than less ads showing. But your interest is benefited from less ads showing and making sure they show at the right time, at the right place, to the right people. But there's this constant pressure that Google wants to let more through. And even though you make the changes that I just showed on the previous screen, you go back 3 weeks later and you're like, oh man, you're still letting the wrong stuff through. It's continuing. So what does this look like again? It looks like phrase match refinement. And you're gonna see data and you're gonna see a pattern that ultimately says, you know, we do better when people are on a phone versus when they're on a desktop, or vice versa. If you're a B2B person right now on the call, you likely do better on desktop computers than you do when the search is on mobile. Well, if that's the case, then let's bid less for people on a phone. Device optimization. If you service a particular geography, you're going to see in your data that for whatever reason, you do better in one geography versus another. Maybe you've got a stronger competitor in one part, but ultimately some pattern is going to evolve. And then you're going to say, okay, let's stop bidding on that geography. And ad creative, which we're about to explore, is a continual refinement process. You know, when your ad appears in that search engine results page and somebody else is right below it, at that point, it's a bar fight. It's a bar fight that's only going to last a couple seconds for somebody's attention. Really doesn't even last a couple seconds. It's almost instantaneously. Why are they going to click on your ad versus the ad below it? You got to say something unique. You got to say something powerful, and you're going to be continually testing for that. And bid optimization, you know, great. Maybe you do really well when you're in the absolute top position, which is a piece of information you get back. But maybe you can slide down just a little bit because you've got a great ad and it stands out for a number of reasons. So maybe you look at what does it cost? What's the effect of bidding just a little bit less? And the other giant pattern that's going to scream at you is that not everybody's going to react the same way to your ad and to your landing page. You're going to find that it's either men or women or certain age groups, depending on your business, and you can ultimately refine. You don't have to show your ad to everybody, because here in 2023, we don't hunt for customers with a shotgun, we hunt with a laser. And this helps us refine all those opportunities to get down to a very fine point as to who we want to be able to try to sell to. All right, 28 minutes left, good pace. Let's talk about writing ads. And I grabbed these ads, I think I grabbed them about 2 weeks ago. And I thought they were good examples of terrible ads. And these are from big companies, right? So this pest control company here is telling you, the first thing they want you to know is that as a pest control company, you can count on them to keep your home pest free, which I think is a little bit of a low bar, right? So I'm kind of hoping that's a baseline assumption there. But that's their value proposition, that they can keep your home pest free. You can contact them today, and then these are the other things. I think that ad is terrible. And this pest control company is willing to tell you that their technicians are trained in pest, which is kind of surprising for a pest company. I guess they think that not all pest control companies train their technicians in pest control, but this one does. So if that's surprising to you, then they're a good thing to click on. And the other one just says they're committed to personalized attentive care for commercial and residential customers, which, by the way, commercial people search differently than residential, so we should not be showing this ad to both. And so here's a great example of what they're doing in one campaign should be split out and be in 2 different campaigns. So even here we are in 2023, Google Ads has been around since arguably 2016, and we've got not a lot of attention being paid to the quality of the ads. So which one do you click on? What's screaming out at you? What jumps out at you, right? Not a lot. Now I grabbed this ad too, completely different service line, but look at the action language here. Pore by pore treatment to extract blockage. And this is of course for the phrase hormonal acne treatment. Pore by pore, man, that sounds diligent, doesn't it? That sounds really exacting. See video gives me a promise. Why should I click on the ad? Because there's a video there I can see. Amazing results, not a cream, not a gimmick, professional, in office, proven in office, advanced help for hormonal acne. Notice how they use the keyword in the ad. CR reviews, another reason to click on it. Weekend and evening hours, 15 years of success. Oh, now there's a value proposition, free consultation. You know, what happens here is that this ad is trying to sell the click. Whereas if we look here, these people are making the mistake of trying to sell the service. The ad doesn't sell the service. The landing page sells the service. The goal of the ad is singular and distinct. The goal of the ad is to get the click. The goal of the ad is to come out of this fight right here and get the click. And none of these gave me a reason to click. This one gave me a number of reasons to see the click. I can see the video, I can see our reviews, etc. Get the click. So, and I've got before after photos, guaranteed results. Well, you know, not everybody can put that in their ad, but you know, they've got, obviously they've read the book, The Seven Most Powerful Words of Advertising, and they put it in there. So writing a headline is key, right? You always want to win the battle of the headline. As with any form of copywriting, you'd rather win the battle of the headline than the war of the words. And so in Google Ads, you're going to do just like we saw in Smart Campaigns. This is where they're exactly the same. Is you have to put in, I think you can put in up to 15 headlines on there, and up to 30 characters each. Remember, what Google's going to do is Google's going to shuffle them around. Now, what you can do in the Smart mode, in this extra mode, is you can pin certain combinations. So if this is, hey, I always want this to appear first in this ad right here, right? If I always want it to appear there, I can pin it. And if I want something to always appear here, I can pin it with number 2. Now, the hypocrisy of that is that as soon as you pin something, there's a little score that's going to appear up here. And so it can tell you whether your ad is weak or strong. Your rating will automatically go to weak if you pin anything, because this is Google telling you that algorithmically they're smarter than you. So when you make decisions, you get slightly penalized in that. But if you know your business and if you're wanting to do some testing, you definitely have to make that choice, and you got to pin it there. And then you can do the same thing with descriptions. You can put in 3 descriptions that are 90 characters each. And if you don't pin anything, you're giving Google the ability to arrange these in the order that it sees fit. And the data that you see is you can see the most popularly used combinations, but you cannot see the most effective combinations. You also get to put in a final URL, the landing page, and as we saw previously in the program, a display URL, which is like a vanity plate, a URL that looks friendly and looks attractive, but isn't actually the URL of the page itself. So my tips for writing great ads: sell your website. Biggest mistake people make. Get people to the click. You know, think about your landing page. You know, it could potentially have 300, 600 words. And we just reviewed something that has 3 30-word elements and 1 90-word elements. Where can you do the greater selling? On the landing page. Sell the click, not the service. And you know, you've got to look at all your ads, and this is true for any form of marketing, right? No different. You got to answer the question, why you and not another business? And one of the tests I would ask you to do before you write your ads is do these searches. Record, write down, screenshot. What did the other advertisers say? And so if you just go into that slog saying the same thing they're saying, well, then you can't be disappointed with the results. Use active sentences, not passive sentences. Remember, every character counts. Every word's got to fight their way into the ad. You know, when I teach Google Ads in longer versions, I always say you've got to learn how to give your ads the finger. Give your ads the finger. And what I mean by that is if you can put your finger over a word in the copy that you've written and it doesn't distract from the meaning, then the word shouldn't be there. every word has to earn their keep. Every word's got to fight their way into that ad. Remember to include the keywords, match what the searcher is looking for. Ads that have the searcher's words in it get twice as high as a click-through rate. And that's not surprising, right? I mean, you went into this Google search thing to find something. When you see an ad that matches what you're looking for, you're more likely to click on it. And there are no evergreen ads that last forever. You're continually testing and revising to get better. Last thing we'll talk about before we get to our last Q&A section is having a great landing page. And here's the thing about landing pages is even if you have a great Google Ads program, right? You've listened to everything we've said today, you're still just a great quarterback. And if you have lousy receivers, team still loses. You got to have a great quarterback, which in this case is Google Ads, and you've got to have a great receiver, which in this case is your landing page. You cannot succeed in Google Ads with an ineffective website because it's catching all of these things that you're throwing at it, and if it can't put its hands around it, it's just going to drop them. Well, then nobody makes money. So your landing page is critical to the success of Google Ads. And what you want to do as a Google Ads manager is your goal is to take that searcher and land them exactly on what they want. You got to show how you solve whatever problem they're trying to solve. Remember, as we saw in the many previous examples, if they want mint chocolate chip ice cream, and I know you're probably saying, oh, is it really this bad? Do you really have to be this specific? Yes. Yes, you do. You do. So they're not going to be satisfied if you land them on a page that's about ice cream. And even though you say, oh, well, you know, they'll find their way to the mint chocolate chip ice cream. No, they won't. They're just that lazy on the internet. And besides, somebody else is going to offer them through an ad the exact opportunity that they're looking for. So even if they click on your ad, go to your landing page, they're dissatisfied, they go back, they repeat the search, they click on another ad that has a more precise landing page and a more precise value proposition, and then that company is going to get the conversion. So it's really about taking the searcher to exactly where they want to go. So here's some tips for a great landing page. You know, be focused. When you look at your website right now, every website page has to have a purpose. You know, when we do websites, we assign a keyword per page. That page's role in life is to either rank for this phrase or to be a PPC landing page. And in all of our documentation, when we build websites, when we manage it, everybody knows that that page has that purpose. And if we need another page, then we got to build another page for that purpose. But every page has a purpose. And remember, the more specific your query is, the more specific your landing page has to be. I'm not going to use the phrase mobile friendly. We shouldn't even be talking about mobile friendly anymore. If we still have to have the conversation about mobile friendly, then you're really far behind and you got a lot of catching up to do. I want you to be thinking in terms now of being mobile valuable, meaning that you've customized the mobile experience so that it brings value, and it may be a different experience than what's on desktop. So if you've said, hey, my website, the mobile version is exactly the same as the desktop version, somebody just rearranged it and made it smaller. Yes, it's mobile friendly, it'll display, but it's not mobile valuable. People have different expectations when they're on a mobile device. They're doing different things when they're on a mobile device. And for most of you, particularly those of you on the call right now, and you're a B2C, you're trying to sell customers, man, your mobile experience is really going to determine whether or not you're successful or not. And even some B2B plays, surprisingly, mobile plays a bigger value, bigger role, but it's not about mobile friendly. Just the fact that it displays and that it's functional, it's not enough anymore. Your mobile experience, you have to bring mobile value. And you've got to have clear actions. How many of you right now, and I'm sure I can't see anybody, but does your website have a button on it that says submit? Raise your hand. How many of you think that somebody woke up this morning and said, you know what, my goal is to submit a form. What I really want to do is I want to submit a form. No. What's the user really trying to do? User's trying to get a price, get a quote, get an estimate, book an appointment, whatever's in the user's minds, talk to somebody, speak to a specialist, start a conversation. whatever in their mind, what they're trying to pursue, what they're trying to achieve, that's what the action on the website is. It's 2023. The word submit should not be on your website because nobody woke up today and said, man, I really want to submit a form. You've got to make sure that your Google Analytics is tracking all the way down to the conversion level. And so I think your conversion rate, in fact, great to have so many business owners on the call today, but your conversion rate is one of those top 5 KPIs that you got to know. It's up there with your cost of goods sold, your net revenue, your net profit, right up there with all those key high-level business metrics is what's your website conversion rate? Because if it's not selling, that's impeding your success. And you've got to be committed to testing and revising. You know, the great thing about today's platforms, whether it's WordPress, is man, they're so fluid anymore. Well, I grew up in digital marketing when, you know, if you made any kind of change, it involved a developer. And, you know, you weren't making what you see is what you get change. You know, somebody was going into HTML and, you know, that's where I grew up. But now, hey, I want to change a word, I want to change copy. Most WordPress sites come with a great page builder, you know, whichever one you use, you know, and just about all of them now are really user friendly. And so you've got to be willing to test different headlines, test different copy lines. If I say to you right now, when's the last time you've changed your website? And if that answer is more than 6 months or 9 months, then I'd say you got some catching up to do, because a website is like a garden. Something's always dying. And you got to be pulling it out and replanting it with something else, because it's not static. It's not a building. It's a dynamic form of marketing that always has to be infused with new ideas, new techniques, and new positioning statements. All right, so we've got good landing pages. Before we wrap up here, some additional resources. Google has a great skill shop where you can learn more about Google Ads. You can take a couple tests on Google Ads. It's also where you go if for some reason you want to be certified in Google Ads. You would go to skillshop.withgoogle.com. Google Ads itself has a great YouTube channel, and you really got to work hard to find the one that is from Google Ads, because there are hundreds that are masquerading that they're from Google Ads. But look for the one that's from Google itself. You can follow Google Ads on Twitter, great stuff. LinkedIn.com/learning, which is formerly lynda.com, has some good classes also on Google Ads. And if you want to just a coach, someone just to kind of sit by you, you're committed, test things out, you can go to coach4ppc.com. All right, so here's a quick review of what we've done before we get to some Q&A. Remember, we talked about know your SERP, know the other variables that affect your success. We talked about the 2 types of Google Ads accounts, which are smart campaigns and autopilot. We talked about the 2 different parts of Google Ads, search and display, and you acknowledge in both of these there's far more parts than we had the chance to talk about today. We went over some common Google Ads terms. We said, hey, do the research, do the math before you start, know your keywords, know your target. We went through how to set up a smart campaign. We went through how to set up an expert mode campaign. We talked about what it's like to optimize it, and we talked about how to write great ads, and we talked about how to write great landing pages. So with that, in our remaining 3 minutes, Jessica, let's see if we have any questions.
Awesome. Well, I'll just remind everyone one more time, if you have any last minute questions you'd like to try to get answered today, please feel free to take advantage of the chat box. We'll make sure that we try to get to those. But Matt, I think my first question would be, while we wait for some of those to pour in, could you share a little bit more on the difference between, I really like the distinction you made between being mobile friendly versus adding mobile value. And I'm wondering if you'd expand a little bit more. Do you maybe have a tip or 2 to share to kind of clarify what that difference is, and how to increase your mobile value versus just being, like you said, friendly or changing font sizes or things like that?
Yeah, first thing is make sure you look at the queries that come from a mobile device versus a desktop. And so you might see that people on a mobile device have a different objective. Is step number 1. And then step number 2 is knowing that mobile people are almost more likely to be bottom of the funnel people. When you arrange the copy on that, you'll see that a lot of web pages start out with things that they already know, right? They start off with, what is topic X? Like, even if you go to a roofer, you know, what is a roofer? What does a roofer do? Well, we already know what a roofer does. So let's start off very quickly, and tell me, why should I choose you as a roofer on that mobile page versus anybody else? And the call to action should be higher up in that viewport. When we talk about mobile, Jessica, we talk about viewports, which is what's visible on any screen at one time, one single viewport. And being mobile value means everything that the person wants to do is always visible in a single viewport. We don't want to make them scroll to the bottom to get to the form. And so floating navigation in mobile valuable sites is a great technique to bring value. Don't make them go elsewhere. And some of the techniques that are mobile friendly, like things that will expand, like accordion style navigation, doesn't bring value because it requires too much nimbleness for the fingers. And so people would rather scroll to get that content rather than engage. Because in their social media use, what do? They scroll, right? So we got a whole generation of people many generations of people that are comfortable with this technique of scrolling. And when we design desktops, we don't make it so they have to scroll. We give them things to click on, to expand, and horizontal things to roll left and right. Mobile visitors are very comfortable scrolling, so just let them scroll, but give them what they want, other options to choose within the same viewport by using floating navigation.
Right. Thank you very much. I have another question here that said, it seems like all but one keyword match type is even useful now. Is that basically correct?
You know, I'd hate to say the answer to this, but I think generally the answer to that question is correct, right? Exact matches, because they're taking such liberal interpretations of it. However, you know, people change, language change, culture dictates language, media dictates language. So every once in a while, even though you're kind of honed in on one exact match, doesn't hurt for you to go back in, add a phrase match to open things up to see what else people are using, because it doesn't remain the same. And that's called fishing for long tail phrases. And you get those long tail phrases by expanding to a phrase match for a very limited time, letting more in, getting to review that data and seeing if there's anything within those queries that we want to go after.
Great, thank you very much. Do you have time? I know we're kind of coming up on noon. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Do you have a few more minutes to stick around, Matt? I do have a few more questions if you do.
Sure.
Great. So kind of a 2-for-1 question here. We have someone who's asking, do you think on a website putting owner pictures would be a good idea? And then do you also think, you kind of talked about the difference between putting submit and did somebody wake up and say, you know, I want to submit a form today. Do you think contact us is better, or do you think that's basically the same?
Was the first question pictures of owners?
Yes, adding pictures of the owner.
Yeah, entirely. People want to do business with people, and that goes back, you know, remember P.T. Barnum used to pay people to stand in line in front of his shows because people were attracted by what other people were doing. Through all this technology and all this algorithmic stuff, when all the dust settles, people want to know who they're doing business with. And that's particularly true, by the way, if you're selling anything that comes to your house, it's really important. So yes, pictures, awesome, key important. Second part of the question was, is contact us better than submit? Well, I would say it's better, but there's still better opportunities out there. You know, because generally somebody who wants to contact you wants to sell you something. But let's step back and figure out what is the problem that someone's trying to solve when they come to your website. Like, for example, I see that in the call today, we have someone who is selling security systems. We have someone who's has a 360 photo booth. You know, if I went to a website about a 360 photo booth, I figured that I'm either there to get pricing or to get availability. I think that button should either say get pricing or get availability, and probably maybe 2 different opportunities to get that. You know, if I'm going to a security system, I would either want to get details or I would want to get an estimate or get a quote, would be my guess. So align yourselves with what people are trying to accomplish.
Great, thank you very much. And I'm getting some information, some questions on how to get connected with us. We'll be sure to follow up email to share that. I'm also seeing this question here in the old Google ads. We would have 3 ads per ad group. With the new system that has us enter multiple headlines, it seems difficult to come up with more than 1 ad per ad group. Is it okay just to have the one, since it has hundreds of combinations possible with that Google experiment with? Or also, how can we effectively and statistically determine what makes for good ad copy now that there are so many combinations?
Wow, what a great question. And the answer is pinning. So yes, you should have more than one ad. And for you to take control of your, what is in essence an A/B test, why this versus that, is you do have to pin. So you pin a headline to position 1, you pin a headline to position 2, then you create another ad, which may consist of the same elements, by the way, but you pin something else to position 1 and you pin something else to position 2.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Matt. I am not seeing any other questions here. So with that, I would like to thank everyone for attending today. We appreciate your time. You will receive information on how to connect and how to fill out our survey for today's webinar. So please keep an eye out for that. Thank you guys for everyone's time and for sticking around, Matt, for a few extra minutes to answer those great questions. Thank you so much for your time this morning. This was so insightful and helpful. And thank you to everyone. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.